Hey everybody, so I want to do a little demo for you on how to get started with our vintage state ad. So when I start this, I've got 11 by 14 as my size, resolution 300. So we've got the starting point. Then I'm going to go File, Place, and it's up to you. I've got a file here that's just a vintage paper, and then we'll just rotate it, hold the Shift key, then press the Option so it scales from the middle. And so I've got something like this. All right, so there's my starting point. I'm going to rasterize it so I can edit it later. And then I'm going to go into File, Place Embedded, and I'm going to grab this picture here. Okay, so now with this image, I'm going to press the Option key so I scale from the middle. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And then I'm actually going to pull it down a little bit so it fills the space a little bit more there. Okay, rasterize this. And then when I get started with this, I'm going to change this to a different design. So I want something more like this for my overall design here. Now, I've got all of this stuff here, so I don't really want that. So I'm going to go in and grab my eraser tool, and I'm going to go, let's see here. I'm going to start with about something like this size. Okay, so let's go a little bit smaller, and I'm going to change my hardness to 0%, right? And then check that box, and I'm just going to fade this part out of the design. Just so I'm getting rid of some of this extra detail in here. In fact, that might be a little much because I still want to be able to see my design. So we'll just go maybe like that, and maybe there. Alright, so now I've got my little oil field going on here. Okay, and then maybe it's a different, so maybe I end up going something like this. Who knows? Okay, then what I want to do is, so I've got Oklahoma. So I'm going to start with Oklahoma. Alright, make it bigger, fill the space. So I've got this as kind of a starting point. And then highlight it. I want to go with a different font. I want to go with, let's go New Athletic. Alright, so we're going to go a little bit bigger. Alright, decent size. Okay, and then I want to add effects. So I'm going to add, let's see here. In fact, before that, I'm going to change the color of it. And so I want to go with like a dark red. Okay, and then click on here, click on effects, and then I'm going to add a stroke. And the stroke I'm actually going to make a dark red too, so that's going to pop out a little bit more. Okay, now what I want to do, and maybe it's not even a red, maybe it's like that color. So let's try that. I want this color maybe right down here, and we'll see what happens. Alright, so it ends up being like kind of a purplish. And then I'm going to go mess around with this, and so you see what's happening here. So now I'm getting some pretty interesting effects with my blending modes. So I'm going to go with the soft light. Okay, and then if I want, I can change the opacity just a little bit so it's a little bit lighter. Okay, and then I'm going to type dig for the oil, and then make this a little bit larger. And what I usually want to do with something like this is I want to make it a little more expressive. And so before I chose like an Avenir, so I'm using Avenir, this one, but I want to go with an italics. So we'll go a medium bold. Okay, and then from there I can go in and add some other little details here. Now maybe I want to go with more of a bolder font, so it's kind of a medium, so we're going to go a little bit thicker with that there. So that just looks a little bit better. And then we'll go add, let's add a drop shadow to it, so it hopefully pops out a little bit more. So there's that part. Maybe change the opacity just a little. And there we go. Now if I want to change the color of it, because what was the original color? Okay, that was that dark. So that part's fine for right now. Well, the next thing I want to do is I may even want to raise this up a little bit. So I'm going to have something about right here. So it's kind of in the middle. Okay, now I've got this line right there, so I'm going to make it smaller. Alright, so that's decent, but I want to go a little bit smaller than that. I just want to get rid of this line right there. Alright, next we'll file place, add another picture in, and so I've got these oil rigs. I don't even know what these things are. I've just seen them, but honestly I have no clue what they do or how they actually work. Alright, so I pull this down and I'm going to go to about there, rasterize this layer, and then I want to click on Magic Wand and I'm going to select all the black area. So make sure this box is unchecked. And I go select inverse, delete, and then, alright, I'm going to actually go, let's do a color. Let's see, hold on. Color overlay. And I want to make it white. I'm actually going to try to see what happens when I go with more of a, something like this color. Might look good, might look terrible. I'm not really sure. Okay, so now I've got a color overlay on it. Since I've got a color overlay, the blending modes won't work because no matter what, you've got a color overlay. So then I'm going to rasterize this, rasterize layer styles. Okay, and now I can mess around with this, and now I'm getting the effects that I wanted. But I'm not liking this yellow very much, so I'm going to go back to color overlay and then make it white. Maybe a little bit off-white. So there we go. Rasterize it. And then try some of these effects. Now I'm starting to get what I wanted. Okay, so now I've got that part. Next thing I want to do is I'm going to add another piece into the background. So I'm going to place this embedded file, the oil rig. So I want to put this piece in. Hit return, scale this, just to get another image added into my design to hopefully make it look a little bit nicer. Alright, so I've got that. Rasterize it. And now see what happens when I do this. So some of it's kind of cool. So I can have something like this, right? Notice what the background does. So I didn't even really do anything, but I still ended up with some cool effects. And so if I don't like that, so let's try this. I'm gonna go, which one did I like the most? I kind of like this malt color burn. Okay, so we'll get rid of that. Okay, and then I might even go in and just erase some of that extra stuff right in there. Okay, and then I'm gonna actually go much larger here and erase all of this. Now, the next thing, I'm going to make a duplicate layer and then hide this layer. Take this, and we're going to go something a little more like that. Okay, so now I've got this other little effect going on. Now, what's going to happen if I pull it up here? Apparently nothing. But then I've got just this little effect in here where, let me erase this part. And so I've got something else in the design. So these are some simple little edits that you can do to your design to kind of clean it up a little bit more. Now, eventually what I'm going to do with this picture here is I will want to add like a filter to it. So I've got that part. This text, I'm going to go rasterize the text. And then I'm going to rasterize all of it. So now I've got, let's go back into what I had before. Alright, I didn't like what I did. I didn't like that at all. Okay, so I had this. I'm going to actually make a duplicate layer just so I don't lose what I had. Because I think this one looked really good with without the stroke on it. So I have that, and then let's see here. With this image, so I hide this one. What happens when I rasterize it? Then it goes to something like that. So now what I'm going to end up doing, let's see here. So we'll go back to the normal, and then we'll do effects. And then go into layer styles. And then we're going to do this one. And now what I can go on to, I can add that in later, or I can add the stroke. So I've got, whoa. What I'm trying to do, so I've got this part here, but I want to add a little bit more to it. So what I can do is start erasing some of it, because that doesn't stand out enough. So there's going to be parts of this one that I want to include. And so what's going to happen if I, let's see, rasterize the layer styles of this. Okay, and then I'm going to delete this part. And so now I've got that. Now what I can do is I can add to it. So I'm going to use my eraser tool, but I'm going to go into my grunge brush tool. And so delete this grunge brush. So I added these recently, and I'm going to go in here and see what happens. So I'm just erasing little bits and pieces of this layer. And you guys remember this whole process, right? So I can go in and let's minimize this here. Minimize this. So I'm just using the eraser just to soften up some of these aspects of the design. And let's see how it looks. So let's go back to R, pull it back. There we go. And so now I've got some really interesting effects going on. Now I go back into my layers, and then where'd my layers window go? Here we go. And now I want to go into here, and then with this picture I'm going to go filter, filter gallery, and you'll be able to see what it's doing. Now if I want to see more of it, I'll zoom out. And then you can choose whatever you end up wanting to. But then you're going to get some better effects. I've got sponge right now. Let's see what happens with this. Alright, so not a lot quite yet, but we'll keep adding to it and building it up. So that's kind of a starting point of how this design goes. So I'm hoping this kind of helps you a little bit with getting started with your design. By no means do you have to do what I'm doing, but this will give you a couple of editing tricks and techniques. And if you change this color to something else, you'll give it totally different theme. Because watch, when I go image, adjustments, hue, saturation, imagine if you're doing something with like a lake, right? And now I change it to this, and now look how it's totally changed the overall design. So maybe that'll help you moving forward. So good luck with this.